I wanted to respond to Sound on Sound's video here on YouTube because not everyone reads what's posted on Gear Sluts or Facebook, and this information needs to be out there so that everyone can make better purchase decisions after watching their video and this one. Now, before anybody calls me a Slate Digital fanboy, go watch my FG Bomber video. That should clear everything up. So, on with the video. First of all, I want to say it was a very well produced video. It is packed full of microphone information, fancy motion graphics, and editing. There are nice close-ups of the microphones. There's rack focusing, slider camera movements, and the way that it was set up for a microphone shootout was very well done. And then the video ended with a group discussion about the results. This is the type of stuff that I love to do here on Real Home Recording, so admittedly, I'm jealous of the video. However, there was a very fatal flaw in the shootout. A flaw that caused me to post this comment on the video. In all samples, the VMS had more sibilance, a brighter upper mid-range in general. As it turns out, there was a very good reason for that. The microphones that Slate Digital modeled were not the microphones Sound on Sound used in their video and magazine review. The reason this is important is because the headline that's presented on the cover of Sound on Sound magazine's November 2016 issue is Slate VMS versus the Real Thing. That cover story headline is misleading. Anyone that's familiar with tube condenser microphones will know why. For that matter, anyone who's familiar with guitar tube amplifiers will understand this as well. If you don't, keep watching and I'll explain. Comparing two different vintage tube condenser microphone models is no different than when I compare the Shure KSM8 to a Shure SM57. Vintage microphones, in this case we're talking about some that date back to 1946, have design changes over the years. And along with age, these two factors alone will change the way a microphone sounds. If the tube itself is replaced, it will more than likely sound different than the original did when the microphone was brand new. These differences range from subtle to drastic. As I talked about in a recent video about powering down audio gear, heat is an electronics killer. Dust plus moisture from spit and humidity, not to mention particles from tobacco and marijuana smoke, are microphone capsule killers. And by that, I don't necessarily mean that they'll break the microphone capsule, but over time, this damage changes the way a microphone sounds. Ever heard the term matched microphone pair? Even brand new solid-state condenser microphones won't necessarily sound exactly alike. So, from the word go, the microphone shootout was flawed. Being that they are a very large publication that has been around for decades, they had enough clout to contact Slate Digital if they wanted to and ask if they could get their hands on the model microphones. Having said that, there were some things that Sound on Sound should have done to make their test a bit more fair. First, in their Sony C800G shootout, they used the modern, straight-out-of-the-box FG800 emulation instead of the vintage model one. The real Sony C800G that Sound on Sound rented was older, and therefore it would have better matched to the FG800M emulation. SOS have since apologized for that mistake in the written review, and they say they have posted updated shootout files with the proper vintage emulation, but as of this recording, files that were created on September 23rd, 2016 were still in the zip file. The Noi Minh U67 that Slate emulated has a broadcast filter circuit mod, which increases the high-end frequency response. Interestingly enough, this does run counter to the Classic Tubes 2 collection promotional video that classified the FG67 emulation as having a dark top end. The presence certainly was there though, so that adjective was accurate. The microphone SOS used did not have the filter mod, but in their defense, Slate should have put that information in the manual, but they did not, so I can't fault SOS on this one. Sound on Sound has amended their online review with an editor's note about the discrepancy. And now we get to the C12 Shootout. That was a joke, since Sound on Sound admitted that the capsule wasn't the same, and who knows what else was different. The original capsule has a brass diaphragm clamping ring, and the later models used a nylon ring. At least they did make that difference clear, although the comparison is inherently unfair and not in line with their headline story. Finally, Sound on Sound failed to mention that VMS has an intensity control in their video. The intensity control, when increased from its lowest 100% position, reduces the high end and increases the low mids, among other things. They don't show the plugin settings on screen, so I'm not sure which settings that they used. I also wish they would have repeated the same audio clip back to back instead of flipping back and forth between settings, although you can download the uncompressed files, so that's good. In the written review, they do say that they increased the FG800 intensity slider to better match the real microphone, but that was prior to them learning that they used the wrong emulation entirely. All that being said, again, I do feel that it was an interesting shootout. The video was very well put together besides those testing flaws. And I will say this, one thing that has often irritated me with condenser microphones is that high mid-range tizziness, as the SOS guys called it. If that sound, which isn't always easy to EQ out, is present in every VMS emulation, then honestly it's a deal breaker for me. I haven't tried this microphone out for myself, so I really can't say for sure. Although one person on Gear Sluts did recommend putting a low pass filter or a high shelf cut prior to the microphone and preamp emulation plugins to better match aged vintage microphones. Links to Sound on Sound's shootout video, their magazine review, and Steven Slate's post, where much of my information came from, are in the video description. This has been Adam for RealHomeRecording.com.